So it gives me great pleasure to be able to welcome my guest today, and not just because he's head coach for GB Snowsports, but because he's someone who I've known for 20 years and who I've had the pleasure of watching his rise through the industry from ski bum to respected freestyle coach whose protégés have won medals at every competition up to and including the Winter Olympics. So I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Pat Sharples.
Yeah, really good to catch up, especially after such a long time.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us today. Where are you joining us from today, Pat?
I'm currently at home, live in Lytham St Anne's now, so just on the same coastline as Blackpool. Beautiful place here with my wife and my two kids.
Excellent. And let's start off with a traditional question we like to ask all of our guests. When did you last go skiing?
Oh, actually, it wasn't that long ago. It was only a few weeks ago, but in Kazakhstan, of all places.
Wow. Okay.
First time I'd ever been there. Kazakhstan was exactly as I expected it to be, or I visioned it to be. The ski resorts were amazing, absolutely brilliant. Really loved it.
Was that for an event or on the tour or something?
It was actually the Mogul and Aerials World Championships. They moved it there at the last minute. So yeah, okay. It was a bit of a surprise trip, but it was absolutely fantastic.
How did that go for the team?
It did really, yeah, it was really good. I was there with our Mogul team, and we got some really good results, especially Thomas Gerken Schofield, who got a sixth place in the dual Moguls. And his sister Michaela did incredibly well. That whole team's exploding at the moment. I think they're really going to shine over the next sort of 8 years or so. And Lloyd Wallace was there from Aerials, who also performed really well and made the finals. So yeah, great trip.
Great. Well, that's very exciting and interesting that you were there, because we'll talk about Moguls a little later on, because I seem to remember that was one of your early specialities. But, I referred in my intro to the fact that we've known each other a long time. I'm pretty sure I first met you back in Courchevel when I was running Natives, when you were kind of ripping up the slopes in the Three Valleys. Can I ask, let's go back a little bit. How did you end up in Courchevel and how did you get into skiing?
It was, I got into skiing when I was probably around about 7 years old. And my dad used to take me to the dry ski slopes, Rossendale Ski Slope in Lancashire, and just sort of fell in love with it. I used to just be very playful on my skis, did some of the Alpine training, really enjoyed all the summer race leagues, used to play around with a bit of freestyle, even ski ballet. Yeah, just anything that I could do on my skis that was fun. And then when it came to, when I was getting to about 16, and I wanted to continue skiing, but I couldn't afford to sort of go away or compete on the Alpine circuit or anything. So it was then that I decided I would go and try and find a job in the Alps. And I actually got a job lined up through a friend as a ski technician in Champagny by La Plagne. And got there, and I was my boss thought I was 18 and speak fluent French, and I was actually 16 and I couldn't speak French, and I looked about 13. So as soon as I got there, he was like, "That's not happening." So I didn't want to go home. So I actually just, I saw people were hitchhiking. So I hitchhiked to my, the next resort, or where this person was going who picked me up, which happened to be Courchevel. They were going to Courchevel 1650. They dropped me there, and I ended up living there for 12 years.
12 years. But when you were living there, I seem to recall that initially you didn't actually have anywhere to live. You're kind of making it up as you were going along.
Yeah, it was, I think I was probably the only homeless person to be living in a ski resort, maybe. Yeah, I got there and I didn't have any money, or hardly any money. And I've managed to sort of, when I started asking around for work again, people weren't taking me seriously. I looked way too young, couldn't speak French. However, I've managed to find a sneaky little spot in the lift office where I could go and put my head down. And it sounds really bad that I was living rough there as a young kid, but it actually wasn't as bad as it sounds. I felt safe all the time. It didn't feel any big deal. It's hard work carrying all my ski stuff around all the time everywhere. But then
Were you
gradually,
not very cold?
no, no, like, the lift stations in Courchevel are actually really nice and quite warm. But yeah, people started seeing me around and think almost felt sorry for me and started giving me bits of work, washing up, cleaning beds, cleaning toilets, and eventually a company called Ski Olympic, they took me in, and they gave me a lift pass, they gave me a place to give me a bed, and it was like, I'd got everything then. It was incredible.
Yeah, great. And I think I remember that Ski Olympic place. It's sort of right in there was a big hotel there, right in the center of 1650. Is that where you were living?
Yeah, Rocky's Bar, and
Rockies,
the
yeah.
hotel was Hotel Les Avals. And once I worked out there was a TV lounge as well. So I sort of upgraded from the lift pass office to sneak in the TV lounge. So that was even more comfortable. So I did that for a couple of weeks as well.
Great. And obviously you must have, you were in Courchevel, you were keen skier, done, well and done racing, etc. But were you doing kind of moguls at one stage and then somehow that transitioned into the sort of freestyle scene?
I did. So when I every day I could go skiing from 12 o'clock, we'd finish all our jobs and we'd go skiing. And that's when, everything really opened up to me. I could ski the whole mountain, started skiing in the backcountry a lot. But that season, there was the snow wasn't that great, and there was just moguls everywhere. And I just loved it. I just continued to ski moguls every day from the moment I got on skis to the moment the lifts closed. 6 days a week. I wasn't allowed to ski on Saturdays. We were too busy. And that then progressed into doing some local competitions, and then realizing to myself, I'm like quite good at doing this, and maybe I should pursue this further. And that's when I started looking about going to the national championships, and seeing if I could work it up on the international circuit. So that really kick-started from there and just happened naturally.
And that, if I recall correctly, then there was a series. I've actually got a flyer in my study here somewhere, which was called I think it was the Shaker in Meribel, and then they had one in Verbier as well, and one in Val d'Isere, a series of mogul competitions. Is that what you were doing?
Yes. Oh God, these memories. It's so good to talk through all this, Iain. Yeah, that was in 1996, and it was the European Mogul Challenge Tour,
There you
and
go. Yeah.
the Shaker was the grand finale. That was in Meribel, and there was other ones in Verbier, Chamonix, and I think it was Courmayeur. So it was spread out over 5 or 6 weeks, and I was on the podium pretty much every single one going into the finals. And I'd been like third or second in ones, and I was desperate to win one and win the overall tour. And that was in Meribel, which was just over the other side of the valley from Courchevel. So it felt like I was on home turf. But when I won that, I remember that opened up like a whole new world for me. That sort of was my first step to becoming a professional skier. And it was all televised. It was all on Sky. Matt Chilton was doing the commentary. He did a huge piece on it. And that sort of opened the doors. I got then sponsored by Oakley and Salomon, and they were providing me with all the kit. It was just an amazing time, and that was it. I was hooked in then and thought, right, maybe I should continue to pursue moguls and maybe give the All Olympics a go. But at the same time, I was generally as excited about skiing the backcountry, and the free riding was coming in, and it was just a really exciting time to be in the ski industry.
Yeah, actually, I've managed to find it. I'm just going to hold it up, see if you can see it now. That is a flyer for the European Mogul Challenge for 1995.
Wow.
Sponsored by Highland Spring, Black, Strambuie, Mark Warner, and White Stuff. And it's got a picture of Richard Gay. He must be one of the guys you were coming up against in some of those races.
Yeah, he actually won a medal. I think he won a medal in the Olympics. I can't remember which one it was. He got a bronze medal, but he was the top guy. Yeah, at that time.
It also says there's a prize fund as well. So you're winning cash for those races as well.
Yeah, I did. I did win some cash, and they used to get. There's so many prizes that they used to give you as well. Like you said, it was sponsored by White Stuff and Drambuie. So I used to leave with all of these goodies, and then I used to go back to Courchevel to see my friends, and used to be throwing out, all the freebies that I'd sort of won to them, or swapping them to pay my bar tab off and stuff. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, good times.
That's brilliant. In fact, it's interesting. I spoke to Martin Bell a little while ago, and he suggested to me that there's actually more money in British skiing and ski racing back then, in that era when Drambuie, etc., and other sponsors were putting money into it, than there is now, where it's it's thinner on the ground and harder for competitors to get by.
I think it's just different. I think for Alpine, I think they were the glory days for sure. Within freestyle, there really wasn't that much, but that was a very specialized event. It wasn't a part of the Olympic circuit. The rules were slightly different for the judging, so it was a little bit different. So it wasn't loads of money. No, hardly any at all, really. It certainly could fund what I was doing, but it definitely helped.
Yeah, well, I took part in the Shaker a couple of times, and it is so long ago that I was doing a heli rather than a 360. And that was my biggest achievement, to be able to do that once. And it was actually Big Mac, Iain McCloskey, who taught me how to do that. You know him?
I do, yeah. Legend of Meribel.
Exactly. So you mentioned then that you ended up being sponsored by Oakley and Salomon, and I'm pretty sure that probably led to the next stage, because Salomon brought out that revolutionary twin tip ski, the 1080, and I imagine you probably got hold of one of those quite early on.
I did. I was actually the first people that Salomon sponsored for the new free ski movement was myself and Jim Adlington, the founder of Planks.
Yeah,
and
funnily enough, I had that on my notes here, because he went through a similar journey over in Val d'Isere, being a ski bum, and I think he told me that the Salomon guys came out and he saw these skis in the locker room and said, "I've got to get me a pair of them."
Yeah, that was it. Jim was almost doing very similar thing to I was, but over in Val d'Isere, and there was Dave Young over in Teens, there was Jamie Strachan in Chamonix. We were all sort of doing our things in our different resorts, and it was great because we would link in now and again as well. But the whole bit with the 1080, the first ever twin tip, it came at a really big time or important time of my life, because I'd blown my knee out for the set of my second knee out. Knew I wasn't going to hit it for the Olympics. I was not even thinking about continuing after I'd done my rehab for my knee. It just didn't excite me anymore. But the new wave of free skiing really did. And again, the backcountry, not just the freestyle. And Salomon were so supportive, as well as Oakley, and they were saying, just focus on this. It's not even about the competitions. We can just use you for media coverage, for photo shoots, for filming, demos, and what led into being what I'm doing now within the coaching side of it. I was going around and coaching trying to mentor the next generation, and Salomon was really encouraging to help me do with all this.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll move on to that coaching side of things. But just in that era there, you said that, they were looking for you to, just to help them, generate a good coverage. And I think there were a number of events you did in that era, that sort of time, and including going up to Sweden and taking part in one of John Olsen's events.
Yes, actually, I went there, but I was actually commentating. I wasn't at that level in the freestyle side to actually sort of go there and compete. But I did go there to the Ewan Olsen's event. I did the commentating, and again with all the world's best. So I was very much a part of that scene. Again, a lot of the stuff that I still did some competitions. I did a lot of the free ride competitions around the Free Valleys, over in Teens, and any sort of local sort of big air competitions. So I would mix it all around. And then every year, obviously, a big one was the London Ski Show, to go and do the demos with all the British shows. That was that was a huge part of what we did, because it was, we were in that limelight for those 10 days. And the ski show back then, as you'll remember, was just, it was crazy. They'd put us up at the Hilton Hotel. We'd get, paid very, very well. I remember for about 3 or 4 years, I could do a whole winter season on the money that I would earn just from that ski show within like 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? What is it, a surprise that it's not around anymore, or is it actually just the fact that in those days there was it's pre-internet, there were more people who were going along to the ski show and making their decisions there? But that's probably one to answer for another time. But just, it's quite a good transition actually, because you talk about the demos and you mentioned the coaching that you were doing with Salomon. And Warren Smith is another early pioneer on the free ride side of things, and he was organising his ride events over in Verbier and getting free riders. And then that freestyle term didn't really come in until a little bit later, I think. And you ended up joining forces with him to work on the British free ski camps. Was that the first step for coaching?
It was, absolutely. And Warren's definitely a big part of my story, and it was just such amazing times. So Warren was the brainchild of coming up with the concept of the first ever British free ski camps, and it was more targeted at students. And it was in the summer. It was in teens. And Warren was very much still focusing on, the technical coaching, instructing side of skiing, but very passionate about free skiing, like the backcountry, but wanted somebody to sort of oversee the sort of freestyle side. So I took that on. I think Warren at the time was sponsored by Salomon as well, so it fit in really, really well. And the camps were a huge success, and they progressed, and got more people, got more interested in it. And then we moved them to Saas Fee because the park in Teens was getting a little bit tired, and the one in Saas Fee was just incredible at that time. It was a great resort. There was a lot of things to do, after skiing, which you need to do when you're running camps like that. There needs to be lots of activities, skate parks, trampolines, crazy golf, all of that. And Saas Fee sort of could accommodate everything there. And the camps got more and more popular, and we ended up starting running about 3 or 4 weeks every summer. And that's when we started seeing the next generation who would go on to be the big sort of stars within the British ski and snowboard industry. So that was a real exciting time. And that's when British free skiing was absolutely thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, as my time during Natives, were involved in helping to promote that. And I went out to Saas Fee last summer for skiing myself. And I can totally see why, it would offer a lot for a group of young people, plenty going on there. Eventually, you moved on through Salomon to setting up your own series of coaching, which were the Salomon Grom camps. How did that come about?
When I was getting to my sell-by date as a professional skier, so to speak, I was sort of looking about what would be next, as in, where do I move? Do I stay in the ski industry? Do I get a real job? I think everybody goes through a very tricky time. And I see a lot of our athletes now who, they struggle from that transition to find out where they move on to next. And, it's your whole identity when it's something that you've done your whole life, and that's all that you've been really interested in. So it's a really tough time to sort of think about what could be next. And with the Grom camps, actually, it was my now wife, Vanessa, who saw me working at the free ski camps and saying, you are very good at doing this. You are managing it. You are, you're doing a lot of the organization side. You're picking talent. You're working with ski companies to show them who the new future stars are. So why don't we set up our own free ski camps within the UK around all the dry slopes and the indoor centres? And at the time, there was lots of stuff going on in the ski industry. We had the AIM series, which was now the British Ski Tour, run by Spencer Claridge and Stu Brass. And there was more kids getting involved in it. I came up with this idea about the free ski Grom camps to Salomon, and they loved it. They really did. And they wanted to fully run with this. They were massively into free skiing at the time. I think they had about 7 or 8 different free ride twin tip models at the time. You know, they were very well invested in this. And at the same time, they'd given me the job as team manager for Salomon as well. So I was now in charge of sponsoring the up and coming kids, looking for new talent, marketing side of it all. And Oakley did the same as well. So it was both at the same time. So I could take both on because they weren't in competition with each other. You know, Oakley was goggles and glasses. Salomon was the hardware equipment. And it just lapped over really well. And the other thing then, I wasn't that bothered about going for the athletes who were the best sort of superstars within free skiing on the UK scene. I almost had this vision of wanting to find the next talent and helping mentor them and let them naturally become the next big thing. And Salomon, again, trusted me to do this, where, you know, that was a bold move on their side, because normally companies like that just want the top dog. And I didn't go that direction. I wanted to pick my own team. And the first skier that I sponsored was a 12-year-old James Woodsy Woods.
Yeah, I love it. I love that, you know, because we did, you know, quite a few things together back then. And I mean, you know, so many kids went through those Grom camps, and it must be extra special, you know, to see some of them ending up representing, you know, Great Britain. And in fact, there was one event that we ran as natives at the Birmingham Ski Show back in 2007. And I called it the New Breed, and you were the MC, and you dealt with whoever was going to be called into it. And it was just a tiny little quarter pipe, and, you know, it's just not much to do on it, but it was so new and it was something different. And the holiday makers, the people who were there, they just loved watching all these moves. They've just seen people doing aerials for years, which I'm not saying, you know, like Lloyd Wallace and people like that. It's amazing, but just to see something a little bit different. And I love watching the crowd enjoying it. And fortunately, I actually recorded a few things from that time, and I managed to find one of them on YouTube yesterday. And it's an interview with you and a 10-year-old and 11-year-old that you'd invited along for the second day. You wanted them to come along and just to, you know, ride that ramp in front of everyone to demo those skills. And they were Katie Summerhays and Tyler Harding, who are both now in your free ski squad at GB Snowsports. And I think, you know, you must feel like a proud dad a lot of the time.
that explains it exactly how it is here. Yeah, a proud dad. Yeah, they're my extended family, those guys. And yeah, like obviously Katie Summerhays, her sister Molly Summerhays, Tyler, so many of the kids, obviously Woodsy, but then we've got the likes of Pete Spate. There was James and Rob Machen. You know, so many of these guys have gone through to then not only do incredibly well on the world circuit, but represent GB at the Olympics. Many of them have won medals at World Championships, World Juniors, World Cups. It's been incredible. And I think, you know, somebody had told me, you know, back in the days when we were at Rossendale Ski Slope, when we were running the Groms, that this is where it would end up. I would have never, ever believed them. Like, our sport wasn't even in the Olympics then. It wasn't even a thing. It just was not on our radar. So the whole journey has just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It first really sunk into me. I went along to an event which I think was called Natural Born Riders up at Sheffield Ski Village. And I think the Extreme Channel, I can't exactly remember who the sponsor was. And I could not believe how many kids were there, going down to possibly the age of kind of like 6 years old or something like that. Some kid taking the rails and things like that. And you just it was so obvious that there was just this real movement going on, and something really exciting to be part of. So can I ask about how that next stage, the transition to GB Snowsports, came about? How did you, or when did you get that call?
So when my guys through the Salomon team started really progressing well and making names for themselves on the world stage, very much, you know, led by Woodsy's side on there. He started doing very well in some of the major events. He'd gone over to Europe, he'd done a season there, then gone over to America to start trying to qualify for events like the Dew Tour and other international events. Katie was only 13 at the time as well, and we were taking her out to Lax to the European Championships, and I remember she got a podium. She came third in the European Free Ski Champs, so she was making a name for herself. But the big turning point was when we got the call to compete in the X Games, which was the European X Games in teens, and so Katie and Woodsy both got invited, and Vanessa, my wife, and myself took them both out there. Again, I think, we did it as a part of our yearly holiday. We used our holiday funds to take them out there. It certainly wasn't my job, or I wasn't getting paid to do that. We just did it because we wanted to support them. And it was so exciting for me to see my guys in, the biggest event, in free skiing. And Katie did incredibly well. Again, that was the start of her rise on the international stage. But then Woodsy got a medal there, which was just not, again, a part of the script. We never thought that would be something that would happen. And that was a big game changer. And people started taking us really seriously and then saying, how is this happening? And at the same time, or roughly around that, there was a lot of murmurs saying that free skiing or slopestyle and halfpipe could be included in the 2014 Olympics. So it was getting on people's radar, and we'd have these discussions about, is this good? Is it bad? But it was a few months after that then that we got told that it was going to happen. That was officially going to happen. And we just got back from the first ever Free Ski World Championships. That was in Park City in Utah, which again, me and Vanessa had taken the team out there to go and compete. We did it off our own back. We used our own money, and everybody did incredibly well. And then it was the British Ski and Snowboard Federation at the time, and they called me and said, would you be interested in taking on the role as head GB free ski coach for slopestyle and halfpipe? The only thing is we haven't got any money to pay you.
Right. Okay.
So it was almost like going back to when we started the Groms and the Salomon team. It was almost like, well, how do we make this work? We've got to try and find funds to cover my expenses, obviously to pay for our living, etc., as well as get these guys training and on the tour to qualify for the Olympics. And at the time, snowboard, Hamish McKnight was doing a similar thing within snowboard as well, and had some very, very talented athletes on his team. And our athletes continued to getting good results on the World Cup. So then we worked closer together to then put in a proposal for lottery funding with UK Sport, which we ended up getting. We got a small amount to get ours. Well, it felt like a lot at that time to get us going, leading into Sochi, and to see how we'd get on, and then we'd review everything there. Leslie McKenna also jumped on board as a program manager, and she'd obviously had experience within the Olympics as well. Our performance director at the time, Paddy Mortimer, again, he helped do all the paperwork and the admin to put in his proposal. And that was really the start of what became, the first ever GB free ski team, freestyle snowboard, which we then called Park and Pipe. So that's where it really started coming more professional, so to speak.
Right, yeah, and presumably it must have changed your life completely, because you must spend in normal years a lot of your time on the road, right?
Absolutely. I think up until right up until the 2018 Winter Olympics, I was away so much. The last 6 months leading up to Pyeongchang, I think I was away probably around 3 weeks out of every month. Which is really tough, for Vanessa and for the kids, and for all of us. But we all knew how important this was. What could be achieved, and we wanted to put everything into it. So yeah, for those years there was a lot of time on the road. But again, it was just such an incredible and exciting journey at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, some of those events must have stood out. I mean, there've been some great successes, World Cup wins, World Championship wins, and Olympic medals. Could you pick out a highlight of the journey to date?
Oh, there's been so many. There really has. I can't pinpoint just one. That first X Games where Woodsy got a medal, that's always going to be very special. And again, when he got the medal at in Aspen as well, everybody sort of looked at the European X Games as not quite as the real deal. It was all about Aspen. And he ended up, he's had multiple medals, including a gold medal at the X Games since. But Katie Summerhayes winning her first ever World Championships medal. Both Summerhayes winning World Junior titles. Maddie Rowlands winning the Youth Olympics gold medal in half pipe. Woodley winning the overall World Tour, winning multiple World Cups, the World Championships. And again, all of them performing so incredible in the Olympic Games with many top 5 positions. Woodsy 2 top 5 positions, just missing out on the medals each time, but so close. Izzy Atkin with our first ever free ski medal at the Olympics with the bronze in Pyeongchang. That was obviously huge. There's Rowan Cheshire, got the first ever gold medal for half pipe. It could just go on. There's been so many.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing, isn't it? I think I read somewhere that, some, events are particularly different. There was a big air in Boston that kind of stood out just for the atmosphere.
That was a good one. Yeah. In the Boston Red Sox Stadium. That was really incredible. And we used like the athletes' changing rooms and everything else. Amazing. Very, very cold. That was probably one of the coldest events I have ever been to. Okay. And I remember we left there and we traveled over to South Korea for our test event. So we'd flown over there and then we had this long haul flight over there. And I was so ill over that time. And I think I got ill because I'd been so cold standing around in Boston. It's all right for the athletes, we're sort of like skiing and, they're running around and, like keeping themselves warm. But yeah, that was a cold event.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I've watched you in the different Olympics, the little glimpses of you when you're standing at the top of the course just for a little word of encouragement, etc. But you're obviously standing up there the whole time throughout the event. But, looking forward, Beijing, we've got less than a year to go now until Beijing. There's a great squad in place. But I wondered how COVID has affected training in the last year. Has it impacted on qualification, for example? Because I'm guessing some of the events will have been cancelled. Yeah,
it has. It's had a big impact, and I think over the last 14 months, I've got to say, I think FIS have done a brilliant job. They've ran like the majority of those events. Not in every discipline, but, some more than others, but they've continued to sort of push on through the events because obviously, like you said, we've got Beijing within 9 months and we've got to qualify for that. I think the tough bit for us is that things are all very challenging. Being athletes being based in the UK, we don't have the luxury of, climbing out of bed and being in a ski resort like a lot of our competitors. So they've been able to continue to train and continue like nothing's really changed. With us, we couldn't travel for such a long time, so we've had to be creative and we have had to adapt the way that our athletes work and train. And a lot of that focus has been, dryland training, obviously. But as soon as some of the gates opened to get our athletes back on snow, we've managed to I feel like we've done an incredibly good job of getting our athletes back on snow and continue to train out over the summer, getting them to all international events. And we've sort of managed our way or moved our way through this like ninjas. I really feel like we have. And that's down to like the GB Snowsport staff, the program managers. They've been working 7 days a week, night and day, because everybody's in different time zones. And it's been really tough, but I still think we've done a really good job. And we've just come out of this season now with probably one of the best, seasons on record with regards to results across all disciplines. So yeah, we've definitely done something right, but it's not sustainable. Like the amount of work that's gone into it, and everybody's sort of on their knees now, including myself, and we sort of, running on fumes. But, when we now need to reflect and deal with the aftermath of it and prepare ourselves for Beijing. But tough year, but at the same time, it's still been a successful year.
Great. Well, no, that's very encouraging to hear. I mean, I think some members might be based in ski resorts, like Izzy and Zoe Atkin. Are they based in the States?
They are. So they've been incredibly lucky. They're based in Park City.
Yeah.
Um, and they've been able to continue to ski where not much really has affected them as it has with the likes of, say, some of our UK based athletes like Katie Ormerod, Katie Summerhays, Tyler Harding. That it's been tougher for them. But we've got the Gerken Schofields as well, who are based out in Châtel in France. So we do have Charlotte Banks as well, also based out in France. So we do have athletes in different places that they've been very fortunate just from where they live.
Yeah. And in terms of summer, then, in a typical summer, I would imagine that a lot of the team would be heading down to New Zealand, for example. And I'm guessing that's off the cards for this year. So will you be on Glaciers in Europe?
I'm pretty sure we will. Yeah, at the moment, just going through all the different plans. We've not even put New Zealand on the schedule at the moment because we wouldn't be allowed to go there. There is talk of them running a World Cup Olympic qualification event there, which they normally do every year in September. But I'm not getting my hopes up for that. So I think we're going to be very much using the European glaciers. We did last year a lot with the Alpine guys. Dave Riding and the rest of the Alpine World Cup crew and Europa Cup crew, they pretty much based themselves there the whole summer long. And as we said earlier on, it's such an amazing place. For me, we sort of get quite a lot of what we need there anyway. We're still using Teens Glacier as well, Les Avals. We're so lucky that we've got access. The next big challenge that we're dealing with, this is a real tough one. And everybody thinks COVID's been tough, but one of the other things that's equally as tough is Brexit, because then we're limited to the 90 days of what we can do. And us as for our athletes and our coaches, that's a real problem. So, but we're figuring ways around it, and we will, just like everything else, we'll deal with it and take it in our stride.
Great. Well, I wish you all the best for the summer. I mean, you've mentioned a whole number of names that you've mentioned who are medal prospects. Charlotte Banks clearly, is a world champion at the moment. Woodsy's had a couple of top 5 results before. Izzy Atkins, a previous medal winner. I know it's almost impossible to answer this, but what do you think a realistic medal tally could be for Beijing 2022?
I really never feel comfortable with sort of like putting a amount of medals, on the table and saying this is what I think we could get. But Beijing, I feel, is going to be a very, very different games than what we've had previously, and for many reasons, mainly due to COVID. We're not going to get any test events there. We're not going to be able to go over there and experience competing in Beijing before the Olympic Games. It's all going to be done on artificial snow. It's all going to be done on artificial hills. Everything about it is pretty much artificial. So we're going into very much the unknown. The Chinese have been training there for the last year in all Olympic venues. That gets into trouble for saying this, but it's the truth. They have. So they have got there's definitely an unfair advantage of just that alone. But it is what it is. And to me, I just look at it as like another event. We go there like we do every event and we do our best to smash it. And I feel right now with this team across all disciplines from GB Snowsport, we're in a better place, or we're more podium competitive with more disciplines than ever before. We've got a very, very strong cross-country team. We've got a very strong Alpine team, a very strong new up-and-coming Mogul team, although I see their full potential of being really released in 26, 2030. And then obviously our free ski and freestyle snowboard teams are hugely stacked there. We've got the current world champion within Charlotte Banks from snowboard cross. So there's just a lot of opportunities, but like with the games, you can go there and you can just be damn unlucky sometimes. You just never know what's going to happen with the winter sports. And that's what makes it so exciting at the same time. But what we try and do is just make sure that we're at that level where we can be podium competitive, and we go there and we do our absolute damn best to sort of put it down. And that's what we'll continue to do in Beijing.
Yeah, well, all the best for that. I mean, it's clearly such a strong team because there's other people you haven't even mentioned, like Kirsty Muir, who I'm pretty sure is only like 17 or 18 still at this stage, right? She's had World Youth Games medals. And Zoe Atkin is Izzy Atkin's younger sister, is that right?
Yeah. Two very big names to sort of bring up there. You're absolutely right. Yeah, with Kirsty, you know, what an incredible year that she's had, and her performance level now is she's right up there. She worked incredibly hard. Kirsty's only 16, and 16 works with a good friend of mine who was at the New Breed competition as well, Joe Tyler.
Oh yeah.
He coaches her as well, and they've done a great job. And to see her, yes, to 6th place at the World Championships, and her first podium at World Cup, obviously a medal at the Youth Olympic Games as well. So again, she's right up there. And Zoe Atkin, absolutely, 3rd at the World Championships, 2nd in the World Cup, and 4th at the X Games. Younger sister of Izzy Atkin. She's another hot prospect as well. So
how old is Zoe?
Zoe is 17.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Both young. Can I just, we could talk about the athletes all day. I won't go through them one by one. But one thing you said earlier did strike a chord with me. You mentioned about that transition that you had when you stopped being a professional athlete. You had to think what to do next. And earlier on, you mentioned Rowan Cheshire. And Rowan Cheshire, tremendous talent. You know, I think she won gold in the half pipe at the World Cup, first female British athlete to do so. She was in the top 10 at Pyeongchang, but she had some bad accidents, you know, along the way. And I think that she made that decision, which must have been really difficult to hang up her skis, so to speak.
Yes, there is a couple of sad stories. It's always really sad when an athlete has to almost is forced to retire. Not because they want to, they're forced to due to injury or complications. And I felt Rowan's transition of what she's moved on to. I mean, I'm so incredibly proud of how she's actually handled that. She did have some bad crashes and dealt with some serious trouble with concussion, which is really scary, as we know. And you know, we're constantly learning more about that, you know, daily. You know, I have a conversation about this with somebody daily, and about how we can be better in this area. And we've actually got a whole team dedicated to just our protocols with athletes when they're going through concussion. And Rowan had a bad crash in the 2014 Winter Olympics in training. And I remember I spent a couple of days with her in a hospital in Sochi, and she came back well. She did recover well, but then had another one, and it triggered complications that she had to deal with. And she was amazing. She continued to do very well. She still got top 8s at the World Championships and the 2018 Olympic Games, but then really realized it was time to sort of call it a day. She didn't want to risk anything else anymore. And she's now at university in Manchester and doing really well for herself. She's in a good place, and we do miss her on the team. But that's how she had to start looking about how she moved to the next stage. And we've got other athletes who are continuing to do that as we speak as well. So it's not easy. But again, I feel that we've got a duty as well to try and help our athletes in the best way, whether they're transitioning off to something totally different, or even transitioning to a different, like maybe even a coaching role or something within the organization. You know, we've got to do our best to help support them move on to the next level.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that just underlines, if anything, that the skill levels are so high at this level. And it can be, you know, a dangerous sport. People are throwing themselves through the air, and it's getting more and more complex the whole time. So when people are watching that, think about all the hours and hours that go into training. I'd just like to finish off with something I spotted when I was doing my research. It's about someone who's not an athlete. Well, I wouldn't say she's an athlete yet, but maybe she will be in the future, called Ella Hall, based down in Chichester. I understand she wrote you a letter and it ended up turning into a bit of a surprise for her.
Yeah. So she wrote a lovely letter and sent it to the GB Snowsport office in London. And I just remember I had a meeting there, and one of the staff came in and gave me this letter, and they were doing a school project about, if they could meet somebody who inspires them or somebody that they're interested in about, and if they could come to the school and do a talk on what they do. And that was in Bournemouth, and close to this ski centre, snow tracks. And I just thought, it's obviously a long way from me, living in Lancashire, but I thought, I'm not going to get many of these, if any, letters like this in my life, where you've got your young girl who said that, inspires you, can you come and do a chat at my school? I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to a school, and it was great. It was great to chat through about what I do, very much like what we're chatting about now, and about my journey, and to see Ella, who's a very good freestyle skier in her own right. I'm hoping to actually go and see her and some of her friends and do a bit of a coaching session soon, actually, at one of the dry slopes. And I've got to say, Iain, they are still now some of my favorite things to go and do, to go and coach the youngsters at the dry slopes, with the younger ones coming through, like the Grom camp days, and teaching people who've never done freestyle to learn their first tricks. To me, I still get probably a bigger buzz from doing that than sometimes being at a World Cup or an Olympic Games. I really do. I love
that. I think that is a really good note to close on, because I think it indicates that you're very generous with your time. You've nurtured all of these people all the way through, and you're still very in contact with the core. So I'd really like to thank you for your time today, Pat. I know you're a very busy guy and you don't have much time for interviews, so I really appreciate it. And I want to wish you and your family and all the team all the best for Beijing. And thanks very much for joining us.
Iain, thank you so much. That is the best way to start a Friday morning. I've really enjoyed that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, listener, to you as well for joining us. And if you enjoyed it, why not tell a friend about the podcast? But until next time, thank you and goodbye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, listener. I really enjoyed talking to Pat. It was such a pleasure to talk to him and to find out a little bit more about his career and all the great prospects that Team GB have for the next Winter Olympics. It took a bit of time putting it together, recording it, etc. It really is like a labour of love. So if you enjoyed the podcast, just a quick reminder that if you want to, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/the ski podcast. I don't drink coffee. I'll convert it into a cup of tea, but any cups of teas of any description are always very welcome. Thanks very much.